Welcome to Eavesdrop Podcast, right? We're all pretty excited to have this first episode. We're calling it the Media Matrix. And it's we're going to discuss, the bias in media, the distrust in media, and the rise of alternative media. So I'm going to quickly just read the opening dialogue and then we'll get into this, guys.
There we go.
So in today's interconnected world, the media shapes public opinion and our understanding of what's going on in the world. But trust in mainstream media is at its all-time low. With concerns over bias, corporate influence, narrative control, as a consequence, we have seen a rise of independent media, citizen journalism as alternatives, and this is shedding light on the unseen forces that have been shaping what we've been seeing, hearing, and believing. So in today's episode, we will take a deep dive into the topic and uncover just how serious this topic is. We divided it into 8 different segments. We'll be talking about the track record of mainstream media, historical context. We're going to dive into Operation Mockingbird.
Wow.
The polling data, trust in media is at its historic lows, bias in the newsroom, and academia. The saturation of left-leaning content, we'll give you the numbers, independent media, the counterbalance, and the control of social media. And then the legacy of narrative control. How long has the narrative been controlled? Or we're gonna dive into that as well.
Let's see.
And then a timeline for achieving this balance. And then we're gonna wrap it up with the conclusion segment of that we titled The Road Ahead. So guys, let's just start with the first one, the rise of alternative media. Do you plug into the MSM? Or do you guys where do you get your news from?
You want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
I'll let you start with this one right here.
I don't really watch any news station. To be honest, I try to stay in my bubble, but occasionally when I do get news, it comes from X, or sometimes it comes from TikTok. Sometimes it comes from the radio. But as far as like CNN, MSN, not for me. What about you guys?
For myself, I don't dwell into the mainstream media. I know back when I was younger, that's what we trusted. That's the only thing that we knew. We thought that watching television or watching the news was the short version of reading the newspaper.
That's right.
Because growing up in the 80s, the newspaper was being thrown on everyone's front porch. Now they don't do that hardly anymore, unless you order it. And you don't see anyone coming around with newspaper subscriptions. So I don't really subscribe to that now because we have a faster way of connecting with real-time information, and we can, find out if things are credible a lot faster by us doing our own research and due diligence.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was a time when we were able to trust the media. Well, I don't know if we had a choice. It was what came out, and we just believed it.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed to be true. It seemed to be accurate. It wasn't until lately that, especially over the last 10 years, that it just seemed as if like, wait a minute, man, that's not what I knew. That's not what I heard, Well, let's dive into the first segment because I got stats.
Okay.
And that's what's going to make this very interesting. So the problem that the mainstream media has right now, through some research that we were doing, it comes down to corporate influence and power players. Maybe there's just too much corporate influence, and maybe there's just too many power players that care about what's being heard and what's being said. But this information that I'm about to share, a lot of people might even know it. They might even be able to answer it as I begin to share it. But I'm gonna ask you guys and see what what you guys think. Media outlets, all the media outlets in the United States. There's a bunch. There used to be a certain number that owned it all, and then it got consolidated, But today, what would you say? How many corporations own all the media in the United States?
I would say a good 18 to 20, maybe 18 to 20, because there's a lot of heavy players. I think Turner and a lot of big, companies out there, but maybe about 20.
Okay. All right.
I'd probably say about 11, maybe 15.
Okay. It's close. It's close. But here's the numbers. 6 major conglomerates control the 90% of the U.S. media.
That's
What?
incredible.
Only 6?
Only 6.
So would you say that gives them the ability to sort of brainwash us?
It's easy to jump to that conclusion.
I don't want to jump in there too quick.
Well, let me share with you the companies and what they own, and then watch how that ties right into exactly what you just said right now.
I'm definitely curious to know.
Yeah.
So Comcast is the first company. They own NBC Universal, which includes NBC, MSNBC, and Universal Pictures. So now all of a sudden we make a pivot from owning news stations to owning these film companies. And man, the film companies, our kids watch them, we watch them. They're part of our life. Walt Disney Company, they own ABC, ESPN, and a whole bunch of other film studios. AT&T, they own Warner Media, CNN, HBO, and Warner Brothers.
Wow.
National Amusement, they own Viacom, CBS, MTV, and Paramount.
Wow.
News Corp and Fox Corp, both owned by the Murdoch family. They own Fox News, Wall Street Journal, and the New York Post.
Sheesh.
Sony owns Columbia Pictures plus other media assets. Well, when you got that much money and that much control, there's only this amount of people that are making and calling the shots.
So let me get this straight, Ruben. These companies, right? Would you say that they're all related to each other and they have unified themselves to give us information in which they want us to believe?
I love how you said that. I love how you said that. I think that's exactly what the case is. You know what? Let me give you another quick stat. In the 80s, 50 corporations controlled the media.
50?
50.
So you mean there was a selection of outlets that we can choose from? Now we only have 6. Let's just narrow down to 6.
Basically, 50 in the 80s, 9 in the 90s, and since 2020, 6.
What is the reasoning behind larger corporations absorbing other corporations? Is it, like I said again, is this to mind control us somehow, some way? Is this they clone Tyrone type of?
But I think that it's a mixture of both. There might be some real legitimate, absorbing because the company's just not succeeding. It's not, it's not bringing in the numbers. It's not profitable, and so they get, absorbed by a more, powerful, organization. But at the same time, too, I think there's room to assume that they would also be absorbed if they're a problem.
Let me touch on that.
It's interesting.
Let me touch on that. Disneyland, the family Disneyland, no longer owns Disneyland in Anaheim. I don't know if you guys knew that. So through the grapevine, they're saying that when Roy Jones Jr. passed away, or there's a Disney kid family member named Roy Disney Jr. After he passed away, a family friend acquired Disneyland, which is the reason why we're all, if we're going to Disneyland, we're all having to pay for rides. Even if you have that Genie Pass, you still have to pay cash to ride some of the rides.
Get out of here.
Promise you.
Get out of here. Right here in Anaheim?
So I want to know who that gentleman is, who he is to the Disney family, and if he's a part of all those 6 that you just said.
Wow.
Yeah, I wonder. All right, let's keep looking at the track record. So far we know there's a huge corporate influence, and that seems to be one of the problems. The other one will be power players. This one we're not going to spend too much time, but here's an example of a power player. The Jeffrey Epstein scandal. Right? Everybody knows about the Jeffrey Epstein scandal.
Beep, beep. We're going to get set. Woo, beep, beep. Here we go.
There's a girl that maybe you guys remember the name. Her name is Amy Robach.
Amy Robach.
And she worked for ABC. She's claimed to have had a story in 2015, and she was interviewing a whistleblower, Virginia Guffrey. And they were being pressured by Buckingham Palace. So think about this. This is another country influencing ABC to not let that interview happen Why? Because Prince Andrew was implicated.
So he has that much power to control the U.S. media?
Or at least ABC, you know, you got to, and that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about where power players, I don't think they have anything to do with these corporations we mentioned, but I think the rich are the rich, right? The elite are the elite. They all watch out for one another.
Royalty is definitely different from living in the United States.
Yeah.
Queen
And
Elizabeth.
I wonder what kind of phone calls they made. And the next thing you know, they're not going to air that show, or they're not going to let that go.
Not only that, the relatives might live in the States too.
That's another one. Yeah. The other one would be the Hunter Biden laptop controversy. There was a bunch of major outlets that were hesitating to report. And that raises concerns over selective journalism, And so power players again, who was making calls or who was making threats so that the hesitation was happening and the people weren't necessarily, reporting. All right, man. But
so when you say selective,
what
do you mean by that? When you say selective, because you said that word selective. So meaning that they only select what you should be hearing about?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. That always reminds me of something that I remember hearing about the chief editor conspiracy, which was, if we go back in the beginning of, when, let's just go back about maybe 50 years, you got a news company, they have about 100 journalists working for them. Not every single story is going to be printed. That's way too many stories. So it's the chief editor's responsibility to make sure that he sifts through which of the ones that are going to make tomorrow's paper. And then at the same time, too, though, if he ends up coming across news that implicates a friend or a powerful, a powerful entity, the next thing you know, he's selecting not.
He may not want to leak that out. He may say, "Hey, you know what? Hey, John, let's just say the name John. Right?
John Doe.
John Doe. Hey, John Doe, we don't want to release that information because we, hey, I just went to your gala last week and, I wouldn't want this information to leak out. Karen wouldn't love that,
Right. And then now
Jimmy will be kicked out of school.
Yeah. Yeah, so to speak.
Samantha won't be getting her tap shoes or whatever. I get
it. All right, man. So that's kind of setting the premise. There's major distrust in the media, and the people say that it's because of corporate influence. They say it's because of power players. And that kind of leads us to this next one. There's another reason why people might not trust the media. Ever heard about Operation Mockingbird?
I have.
Okay.
I know a little bit about it. And I'm just being truthful because some of these topics I may be a novice about. And so these are the reasons why on Eavesdrop Podcast, you get a chance to learn.
Yes, sir.
So thank you.
Crazy that you brought up Edward Snowden. He's actually in a little bit later of a segment.
Oh, okay.
But Operation Mockingbird, it goes back to the 70s.
Oh.
So as far back as the 70s, the CIA, here's what it is. The CIA had a program during the Cold War, and they were recruiting journalists to influence media narratives that were in favor of U.S. interests. When you think about it from a business perspective, you might want to say to yourself, well, what's wrong with that? But it's the dishonest part. And it's about relinquishing that power eventually after you build it up, because having power over, journalists and what they're saying, what they're sharing, how long do you want to keep doing that? And that's the problem, because here's another thing. Let me throw a number at you guys. How many journalists do you think were participating in this CIA program? I got the numbers.
I would say that they selected maybe about 50, maybe 75, maybe 50 to 75.
Okay.
I'd say about 60, 40.
Okay. Well, CIA's relationship with journalists was highlighted in 1977 from Rolling Stone's article by Carl Bernstein. He reported over 400 American journalists had secretly carried out assignments for the CIA over the next 25 years.
400?
400.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, the problem with this is they were able to forecast that for those next 25 years, these 400 journalists were actively carrying out assignments for the CIA for 25 years. So now that from in the 70s to 25 years, that puts us, right into, the year 2000. Now we're in 2024. Is there another 25 years that they've been doing it? So has it actually been 50 years? Are they still doing it? When did they ever pull the plug? Did we ever respectfully know that they pulled the plug?
Or has the technology changed where they can, hide behind some of the ways that they do things these days?
Well, that's
Advancements.
They got better.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think all that could.
You're right.
Go together.
So here's some more data. So obviously the CIA is not going to release a comprehensive document, releasing the names of all the people that are participating. However, there are some that have been leaked out over the years. These are back in the day. There is going to be one I'm going to bring up that's, pretty current. But these are the figures that had no problem fessing up that they were part of the CIA program. So we got a Joseph and a Stuart Alsop. These are two brothers. They were working for the New York Herald Tribune, Saturday Evening Post, Newsweek, and they were part of a social circle of journalists, politicians, government officials that were known as Georgetown Set. We got Philip Graham, publisher of the Washington Post, James Truitt, Life Magazine, National Enquirer, Russell Wiggins, the editor of the Washington Post, columnist for the Ellsworth American, C.L. Sulzberger, a New York Times columnist. And then, I know you guys have heard of this name, Anderson Cooper.
Yeah, wow, isn't that something?
CNN anchor, host of the Anderson Cooper 360. Now, check this out. This is what he says. He says he did, during his time at Yale, he interned for 2 summers.
Speaking on Mr. Cooper. Okay.
All right, what does all this mean? This can probably mean something or mean nothing, but we have real names working for real news outlets, and they're doing operations for the CIA. Now, this part, I don't know how this contributes to the distrust in media, but it does contribute to the idea of controlling the narrative. So, just information that we're sharing.
Yeah.
So if those that are listening in on this is why we call it Eavesdrop.
Sometimes people want to hear about things that are new, interesting, that may resonate with you as well too.
We would love to see the comments from everybody too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get into some polling data. So Gallup, these guys are pollers. In 2023, they polled the American people to see what their trustworthiness was for the news. Where does their trust lie regarding news? So they did newspaper, then they did television news. Just go with newspaper first. How many Americans do you think trust the newspaper?
Well, I think what I'd said, before about the newspaper is that people thought that it was a trusted source, so that there's a lot of elderly people that probably still read the newspaper. They're probably still trusting that source. I would say a good 60% of the people that read the newspaper probably trust in that information. And like you had mentioned, it's the editors that have curated the paper to put up the best articles. So they probably think that that's the truth.
That's the best stuff that people want to hear.
That's the best stuff that people want to hear in a short, paper. And so 70% there. And did you say television?
Yeah. Well, yeah, go for it. And what do you think the percentage is of people that trust the television news?
The television news? I would say that's probably like a good, 50% of people probably trust that.
Okay. What would you say, Paul?
Keeping them on air.
Newspaper, I'd say 30, and then I'd probably say 70% of the people are doing TV.
That they do?
Yeah.
That they trusted about something?
I'd say just because TV's everywhere. Newspaper, you actually have to get up and go somewhere, or it has to be delivered to your house. Yeah. So I don't know if I don't know. There could be more readers versus people watching TV, but in my mind, I would say it'd probably be TV.
Okay. These numbers are going to trip you out. So the polls showed, and this is 2023. In 2023, the American people, they said 26% trust the paper.
Wow. Like, what is it even? What do they even throw?
Why do they make
What do
it?
they throw the paper for? That's a waste of paper.
That is a waste of paper.
That's you cutting down trees. It's a
Ah,
waste of
just like
exactly. What is that? Bum's pillow type shit? What is going on here?
Who knows,
Oh
man?
my
That's
gosh.
crazy.
Well, it's even lower with TV. So
Oh,
you guys thought it
wow.
was a little bit higher, but no, here's to your surprise. The
Wow.
polls showed that 20% of the American people do not trust the news. No. 20%, only 20% trust.
The paper?
80% don't trust the news on TV.
Oh wow.
Wow.
80% do not trust.
80% do not trust.
They do not trust.
So like, wow. So
What? So yeah, where do they go for a source of information?
Well, you know what's funny is that we all know that social media is something it's fairly new,
Yeah.
and a lot of people jump on social media. But here's the argument. So obviously they were controlling the narrative in the newspaper, making it such they made the news in the paper in such a way that they only get 26% of the people that actually even trust it. News media is even worse, that only 20% trust it. So they have to go get their news somewhere else.
Yeah.
So they're probably getting it. Like you mentioned, you said you don't even watch the MSM. You said you
No.
go to X to get it.
Yeah.
Or and
Yeah.
Whatever pops up
Well,
on X.
and if you think about it, we just told our the viewers is that you have to do your own due diligence and now do your research on these devices to find out the right information.
Yeah.
And then pair your sources and make sure that's right.
Yeah, exactly. So another poll, this is the Harvard-Harris poll. It said the majority perceive media coverage as one-sided and agenda-driven. And I think that that's pretty common. I think right now that if you guys, we're having that Thanksgiving meal. There's a full table. We bring up the trust in media, and I think most people sitting at the table are going to say, "Yeah, it's pretty one-sided. They got an agenda," and that's what they're saying these days because these polls are pretty current.
Yeah.
But the data does reflect widespread skepticism. And here's the main question. Does the mainstream media actually serve the public, or are they prioritizing the stakeholders?
Stakeholders for sure.
I would definitely say stakeholders.
Stakeholders for sure.
Yeah.
Did you remember seeing this guy? So I'm gonna say this. So do you remember going on, whether it was your Instagram or some sort of feed or your Facebook, and you seeing where you had the news commentator says, "Hi, this is Karen, live at 7," and then she says something, and then the next picture that comes up, the next guy says the same exact thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The next one says, and it's just all the whole narrative sounds exactly the same. So,
Right.
so that the picture turned out to be about 100 people
Saying
all
the
saying the same
thing.
exact
Yeah.
thing. So think about how many people that are in areas of the country that are just getting programmed that have no idea. They don't have the same access we do. We're here in Southern California.
That is true.
So
Yeah.
if you think about it, we're in the melting pot of everyone. So we have a good grasp on a lot of things, but there's people in parts of the country that they really rely on that.
They take it for
So that
true.
20% is like sitting somewhere in the middle of the country,
Yeah. Taking it for face value.
taking it for face value.
Yeah, exactly. I would say
Yeah.
so. I would say so. And that's good. Yeah. And so to kind of just reiterate, doesn't it suck that they're not actually serving the public when we think that that's what they're there for?
Yeah.
All right, we got some more numbers for you, man. I got numbers for you guys.
Snaps.
So, bias in the newsroom and in academia. Woo, this is going to explain a lot.
Is this going to hurt people's feelings?
This is going to hurt people's feelings.
You mean people's going to start, get your tissues.
We want all the comments.
Get your
we want all.
tissues.
What do you guys think? We
Get
want
your
all of that.
tissues.
All right, so we're going to start with journalistic bias. This was a University of Illinois study in 2020. It showed, what was the percentage that it showed of the journalists that were left-leaning, do you think? What was the percentage of journalists that were left-leaning in this study, do you think?
Let's just say 40%.
I say 65%.
So you guys are both given numbers where it's maybe skewed one way a little bit. And like in your instance, you're saying 40% left leaning, then 60% right leaning.
Yeah.
And then you're almost saying the opposite.
Yeah, I'm saying 65.
Because normally when you see how it's broken down, it could be almost right down the middle. Some leaning a little bit left or some leaning a little right. So you never know.
Wouldn't that be great if that was the case?
You never know. We'll see.
92% of journalists identify as left leaning.
Say that again.
92%.
92%.
Lean left?
92% journalists identify as left leaning.
So how does the right keep winning? So how does the right keep winning? I don't understand.
No,
Yeah.
and look, man, we have to analyze what would be a consequence of having 92% of the journalists leaning left. Tell me that it doesn't affect story framing and even topic selection.
Definitely controls. There's no way out of it.
There's no way out of that.
No.
It's called controlling the narrative.
Controlling the narrative.
You might want to cut that out. You might want to beep that.
Controlling the narrative.
Beep.
So, yeah, I think we should just keep on going with that right there. But yeah, isn't that unfortunate that you would think, and look at that, you would think that it was 50-50 or 60-40, but it's not even that. It's 92%.
92.
So yes, story framing and topic selection is a big deal, huge deal. All right, man. This next one's gonna be. You're gonna hurt your heart if you're on one side of the spectrum. It's gonna hurt your heart. Academic influence.
We still love you guys, though.
We're talking about professors.
Ugh.
Professors in these major universities. What is the percentage of professors in the humanities and social sciences that lean left?
Humanities and social sciences that lean left. I'm still going to say 45.
Okay.
I'll go with 70.
Okay. Now, T, you're saying that these universities have a majority of right-leaning and then a minority of left-leaning by saying that 45%. That's interesting. You're going to be pretty surprised when I give you that number. And you're saying 70% left-leaning, 30% right-leaning.
Can I touch on something?
Yes.
And the reason why I say that is because there's a lot of universities out there that are starting to focus in towards business, but and I think sometimes when you run a business, a lot of times people will be leaning a certain way for entrepreneurship. So, we'll see. And if they are teaching those curriculums in colleges, you would think that those business programs will be supported by people that have a more aggressive mindset.
Allow me to touch on that. I think that in colleges, most of these professors are backed by degrees, but then it's a very small percentage of these professors owning and actively being a part of or having a company. So that's why I say it leans to this, because most of them go to school, get good grades, and teach. Most people that go to school are not thinking about starting a business, in my opinion. I could be wrong.
No, I think you're right. I like that.
That's good.
But both of you are going to be very surprised with this number. I was. Over 90% of professors in humanities and social sciences lean left.
Mm-hmm.
Over 90%. I mean,
90.
How do you even find the university that you want to attend so that you don't get this kind of bias?
That's interesting.
Because, man, think about this now really quick before you say what you're going to say. Think about media narratives now with 92% leaning left, the narrative from media, and now the narrative from academia, if 90% lean left. So we got these two major sources of information that come from the media and they come from thinkers, our teachers and professors. 90% in both of these categories lean left. Tell me that the narrative isn't being controlled without not telling me that the narrative is being controlled.
It's quite obvious.
So what is the solution to counterbalance that? I mean, what would have to happen from?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right.
Or is there gatekeepers that don't allow Is there how
See,
is
that's
that?
a great
It
question.
would have
I
to
mean,
be.
because to me, I'm thinking to myself, we're talking about left and right, both which have privilege. How is one being held out?
Right.
Yeah,
Under
well,
circumstances?
That's a great way to put that. That's a great question.
the balance is off, and
Balance
we
is
want to
off.
know who's throwing the balance off. Who?
I think you said you made a great statement. You said the gatekeeper.
Yeah,
Who in the hell is gatekeeping, and how are they under? Some of this stuff is private. Most people's political views and philosophies are kind of kept to themselves, man. So how is it that they're actually getting a hold of this information, or are they just good at picking their own kind
yeah.
all the time?
They're vetting however they're vetting it.
You
it's
know,
been working.
yeah, it must be something. I mean, you remember the Dukes of Hazzards? Do you remember the song for the Dukes of Hazzards? Just the good old boys. Never meaning no harm. Cheers.
I got some
High
more numbers for
possibility.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Got some more numbers for you. Let's talk about the faculty. So we were just talking about professors right now. Let's talk about the faculty now. So they analyzed the political registration for over 12,000 university professors, and they found that 48% were registered Democrats and only 5 were registered Republicans.
Wow.
That was almost a 9-to-1 ratio there.
Huh.
So like for every 9 left-leaning people they're hiring 1 right-leaning. This is school. This is academia. I mean, we're talking about the kids should be able to be raised up, and the young adults should be able to be raised up with a balance, and them being able to have independent thinking so that they can make a decision based on their independent thinking, not off being tilted. You know what I'm saying? All right. Now let's talk about the history department. So 3 departments: history department, the journalism department, and the communications department. 34-1. So in history, 34-1. For every 34 left leaners, there's only 1 being hired that's right leaning. And these are the history teachers. So what history are they teaching?
Columbus.
His story.
Yeah.
Not our story, okay? We get that right. Not our
I was
story.
taught about Columbus. I don't know what
Yeah.
you guys were taught.
No, he said history when he says
Yeah,
his
it is his story,
his
but
story.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is his story.
Man, aren't these numbers crazy?
Like eavesdropping right now.
So journalism and communications was 20-1. So now that just speaks perfectly to the 92% of journalists that lean left, because the colleges themselves are hiring, or they're hiring the professors that are teaching these classes. It's a 20-1 ratio.
That's crazy.
What do you think it is at the high school level?
And that is going to probably be left for another topic or another episode, because you're right. I didn't get the data on that.
Elementary.
I didn't get
about
that
how
on.
far it drills
Yeah, we want you to think this way and that way.
Yeah. Well, it probably drills all the way down. You know?
Yeah.
Now here goes the last number I'm going to throw at you guys. Elite. So these are the elite colleges, the elite universities, elite liberal arts colleges. 40% of these institutions don't even have one registered Republican on their faculty.
Not even one?
Not even one. 40% of these institutions.
Well, let me say this. It's by design.
Beautiful. That's well said, man. Well said. Wow. So these statistics, they highlight substantial left-leaning inclination among educators, and particularly in higher education. And what's sad, what actually kind of frustrates me, is that when it comes to academic discourse, having these debates, research, when it's time to go redo a research paper, and then the education environment, talk about having no diversity in perspectives for these students.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I still got numbers for you. This next one is going to be so based on everything you guys have heard, all the information all the content that can be found online, all the content that can be found in the libraries, all the content that can be found inside, wherever you want to find information. What would you say? How much of it is saturated with left-leaning ideology?
The majority of it, I would say.
Right?
I would agree.
Based on what we've been talking
All
about,
of it,
right?
Yeah.
75 to 90% of public content leans left. It's left-leaning perspectives. Wow. So the dominance limits diversity like you would not believe. Like it's unlimited almost the way this is leaning. And so when there's distrust in the media, swinging back to the distrust in the media, 80% of people not trusting the TV, and them saying that there seems to be it's agenda driven. There seems to be one-sided. It's accurate.
Yeah.
We just gave you guys the numbers of proving the accuracy of this. But let's talk about social media, because we would think that social media was safe. So they got a stranglehold on the newspaper. They got a stranglehold on the TV. Do they have it on social media? Before I go into these numbers, what do you think?
Well, if the numbers are what they say they are, I think a lot of those people would probably be able to influence some of the larger social media companies as well, too. Those people who have probably studied in those universities. Those large companies probably hired some of the folks that came from these universities to, bring in their ideas and bring in some of the things that they can do to help suppress certain information or
everyone's vetted. Everyone's vetted. We don't want to bring anybody that thinks the other way. Yeah. Everybody's vetted.
Correct. Right. And so I wonder how many, so Zuckerberg, I wonder where does Zuckerberg lean? Where does Jack Dorsey lean before, Elon Musk took it? Yeah. But it's funny. The three people that I just mentioned leaned left.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And are they just a byproduct of their environment? You know what I'm saying?
Or is there a narrative to control them?
Yeah.
So you had mentioned Edward Snowden.
Yeah.
Okay. Edward Snowden starts to creep into this conversation now.
Okay.
For social media, you don't have journalists, it's social media. So if you have powerful players and corporate entities that are making sure that they control the narrative, what are they doing about social media? They do it a different way. Mm-hmm. So the different way that they do it is shadow banning and demonetization. There's a concern about political bias in social media content. Having allegations of practices of shadow banning and demonetization disappropriately, especially when it's politically affiliated. But guess what? It's hard to get this information to substantiate it. It's really, really hard to get it because they need the data from the social media companies. Facebook has to voluntarily give access to their data to show, and so that an investigator can prove oh yeah, you guys are doing shadow banning. Mm-hmm. You guys are disproportionately, you guys are demonetizing accounts.
Yeah.
So I got some information to share regarding, social media. Watch this. There's a place called the Center for Democracy and Technology. They did a survey. They found that about 40% attributed perceived shadow banning to their political views, and another 30% to their social issues. Notice how we have to use the word perceived in these studies because the data is not readily available because these private companies aren't giving it up. Mm-hmm. We have to rely on the idea of the people that are actually experiencing the situation. So they would have to be like, hey, have you ever been shadow banned or demonetized? Great, we're gonna want to talk to you.
Document stories.
Great, correct.
Okay,
that's gonna be that's the only way that we have this information is because of people that are experiencing these situations. Now we need to validate it, right, with the real data, but we don't have access to it. However, let's keep going. So the reports of demonetizing It happened to just come to light in 2017, where it was reporting that it was happening disproportionately to conservatives and independent content creators. And are we surprised knowing the landscape that we're saying, the landscape being 92% leaning left, content. So then all of a sudden now a conservative and an independent content creator, they're squeezing them out. And they're squeezing them out at the highest levels now because they're behaving like the corporate influence and these power players do. Like, in other words, they've gotten their hands in this, is what it seems like, is what it appears to be.
Can I touch on that?
Yes.
I was squeezed out,
Wow. Can you share about it?
Yeah. So I would post every day, 3 to 6 to 12 videos a day. Within about 4 to 6 months, well, I'll say 2 to 3 months, I noticed I was getting traction, meaning I was getting followers every day. So from week to week, I'd get 10,000 followers, another 10,000 followers. I'm like, okay. But I was talking about things that probably were frowned upon, such as trails in the air, underground tunnels. Were these presidents a part of this association? Is this company a part of that? Is the food you're eating real or is it fake? So TikTok, being the company that it is, they would say, oh, the information you're putting on our platform is unoriginal. And then it went from a 1 strike to a 2 strike to a 3 strike.
Wow.
And they deleted
your account.
Yeah. So I was like,
so you were demonetized.
I was demonetized. So exactly what you're saying is true.
And if you were curious to see how many people this has happened to, we don't know how to get the data on.
We don't have the proof.
No. But the other side of the coin is, if they wanted to get information from you somehow, some way, they can subpoena your phone and hold it hostage. One of those companies, those big companies, if they feel that they got something on you, they could take that phone and,
because they still have my information. I don't have it.
Wow.
You can get a rollout of your information after you're deleted. You can get a printout, but I'm pretty sure they store it in.
And that's gotta be a feeling of violated. A feeling of being violated is gotta be real right there, right?
And it even happens with people with their own original content. They'll still hit them with the unoriginality. It's like, it's my content. How is it unoriginal?
Wow. To add a couple more points. So these content creators, they were being flagged by what we call the experts, fact checkers.
Okay.
So the rise of fact checkers seems to be like the minions, seems to be the soldiers, the ones that are going out and doing the dirty work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because how else do they find out whether or not? Because, you can probably use technology like algorithms and so forth to find out what people are putting up and, what should be taken down.
Yeah.
But I think the most effective was the fact checker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these fact checkers, who are they? They're considered experts. They're considered the people that make the final choice, which is that fair?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Where are they located? Where are these fact checkers located? Are they located?
San
seriously,
Francisco headquarters.
Like, if you think about you want to know what these fact checkers are like. Are they in there? Are they in their slippers, their robe? Or are they at home? Are they working?
They're at home.
Are they working remote from COVID? You know what I'm saying?
You know what? No. That's actually.
They say, "Oh, you're a fact checker," but
who are you?
Who are you? Who polices the police?
Yeah.
That's a great question, and I do have one answer. I do have one. Remember Snopes?
No.
Okay.
Who's Snopes?
Snopes was pretty popular, and you can. I don't know if they're still in business now, but Snopes was a husband and wife that did their fact checking from home.
Really?
Yeah, and Snopes was reliable to the extent where people of influence would say Snopes fact checked that and said that wasn't true.
And he was doing it from the house,
right?
And I just
give me some bacon and eggs. I got some facts to check. Hurry up. Bust out that toast.
So this is little by little, we're sneaking into something right here where we ended up finding out about the shadow banning. Because look, we didn't even know about these words shadow banning. Because if your content all of a sudden went from getting a whole bunch of views to all of a sudden nobody's engaging with, nobody's viewing it, you conclude it by yourself. We're smart enough to just conclude like, hey man, something's going on with the technology.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden the name came out, shadow banning. But there's another one, and it was called quality filtering.
Quality filtering.
And it was information that if it was deemed low quality, it wouldn't be allowed to go out. And it was because it was quality filter.
That's crazy.
That was found in Twitter. So this is going to be
that's not cool.
This is going to be
That's not cool. That's like your music is not loud enough, so you can't play it on your music is not loud enough, so it can't get played on the reel.
We turn it up. We got to turn it up. It doesn't meet this platform.
Yeah, it ain't making this platform. It's the monotone. Like, no.
Yes, man. So to wrap up the social media portion really quick, just want to make sure we touch on this aspect that social media companies don't give us access to their algorithms. No. So there's no way of really validating this.
No.
So we're left to this perception versus reality. Oh, that's your perception that might be happening. And then there's a reality of, it happened to you. You know what I'm saying?
I got deleted
right here.
And then there's the what we call the evolving policies. All these policies that change. Nobody ever reads the policies. Nobody ever reads the terms and conditions, but they're constantly changing. Mm-hmm. And the next thing you know, what you thought was okay 2 years ago is not okay today. And then when you go and try to, you press harder.
Yeah.
And then they tell you, oh yeah, that's our policy now. You didn't get the update about our policy.
Yeah.
So they really know how to stand behind something to protect what's really going on here. Uh-huh. So now it's sad to say that our newspapers, not trustworthy. Our news stations, the television news, not trustworthy. And social media is on the brink of getting that label as well.
Yes.
Except for what just happened as of late. And it didn't happen too long ago. But it was the purchase of Twitter. It's when Elon Musk acquired Twitter.
Yes.
He has given a window of time for social media to see if they can wiggle away, wiggle free from what is typically going on with, these power players and these corporate entities. Here's what happened. I'm not sure if you guys heard about the Twitter files.
No.
So the Twitter files, it came about when Elon Musk took over ownership of Twitter. He revealed that there was internal communications. There was just data in the DMs and in the emails and in third-party platforms like Slack. So Slack, text messaging, and emails revealed there was internal communication and decision-making processes regarding content moderation, censorship, and the interactions with government agencies. So in other words, what are we saying here? FBI contacting Twitter through an email or through Slack or through some kind of DM. Colluding.
So is that considered to be centralized?
You mean centralized information? Yeah, it is centralized. When you're talking like blockchain, decentralized, yes, this would be centralized information or encrypted information.
Okay.
But
I'm learning, guys. I'm learning.
Yeah. But check this out. If you guys don't know about Twitter files, let's go into Twitter files really quick.
Yeah, because I don't know about Twitter files.
So Elon Musk, genius, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Genius, man. He walks into, as the new owner, he starts talking to the engineers. Well, first and foremost, he fired everybody mostly.
Yeah, revamped.
But then he went ahead and started talking with the engineers that were in control of, all the content and all everything. And this is when he found all this information. And when he found this information, I don't know if you guys remember him saying this, but he says, hey, I just inherited a crime scene.
I don't remember him saying that.
Yeah. Look that up. That quote unquote, he said, I just inherited a crime scene.
Wow.
And that was based on all the stuff that was happening behind closed doors.
Yeah. I'm curious to know what he did with that information.
So some of the things that were happening behind closed doors, this is what he did. He actually it was a very great idea what he did. He hired journalists and he invited them into Twitter headquarters and he gave them access to the engineers and the backroom information. He gave, for instance, a gentleman named Matt Taibbi. He focused on the government involvement in content moderation that included the FBI's role. This guy was tasked, here, man, you go ahead and take a look at all this. Whatever you find, just like you typically would, report on everything you find, report on whatever you find.
Yeah.
Elon knew what he was going to find.
Yeah.
The other one was a guy named Barry Wise. He was going to expose shadow banning and the existence of tools for visibility filtering. So in order to being able to control who sees your stuff, which is, the essence of shadow banning.
Yeah.
And then Michael Schellenberger, he provided insight into the Hunter Biden suppression. It was a big deal. Why did they actually give one guy, here, you go look at the FBI stuff. Hey, man, you go look at the shadow banning stuff. Hey, man, you just focus on this Hunter Biden thing. He could have gotten a large, operation as well, but he got a specific one. Here's why. It gets good. So, first and foremost, to give you a breakdown of what Matt found, he found internal emails showing Twitter regularly communicated with federal agencies, including the FBI, the DHS, and even the Department of Health and Human Services.
A lot of reporting going on there, huh?
He saw topics that were flagging of election-related misinformation, COVID-19 discussions, and politically sensitive material. FBI, DHS, and the Department of Health contacting. He found internal emails showing them to suppress that stuff.
Some more colluding.
Yeah. The Biden laptop story. Did you guys know that New York Post broke the story?
Didn't know that.
They broke the story, and when they put it on Twitter took it down.
Oh, wow.
And so obviously New York Post has money.
Was this before Elon inherited?
Oh, this was before.
Acquired?
This was
2020.
2020.
Wow.
So this was actually 2019, the leading up to the 2020 election, or probably maybe in 2020, right before November.
Yeah.
So New York Post posts a story. Of course, if they're going to run a story, they've checked all their, dotted all their I's,
checked all the boxes,
and checked all their,
Yeah.
So New York Post didn't like that this happened to them. So obviously they pushed back.
Mm-hmm.
In pushing back, they decided to investigate it. They brought it up to Twitter. And this is what Twitter's answer was. Oh, that fell under a policy called hacked material. And so internal communications indicated a disagreement among executives about whether even to let that policy apply. So what they were trying to say was, this is hacked information and it falls under a hack policy. So this is why we're taking it down.
Yeah.
It's misinformation.
Just like that.
Well, to go through this really quick, shadow banning, it proved to happen. They were able to look at conservative people like Dan Bongino, who had a large following, Charlie Kirk, who had a large following, and they were reporting being shadow banned. And sure enough, Barry Wise, the guy who was tasked to investigate that, he said, yeah, there was a secret blacklist.
Wow.
Election interference. A lot of that happened. COVID-19 content moderation. The CDC was working closely with Twitter. Tweets that questioned the vaccine or even alternative treatments were flagged or removed.
You couldn't even say COVID-19.
Yeah, you'll be flagged.
You'll be flagged if you just said the word COVID-19.
I said it on Instagram, and one of my Instagrams got shut down.
Yeah, if you just said the word COVID-19.
C19.
C19. The viddy.
Well, check this out. When they brought this information to Jack Dorsey, the CEO at the time, this is what his answer was. His answer was, we're often uninformed about specific actions, indicating that key decisions were probably made by smaller, unaccountable teams.
Wow.
That was his answer.
Unaccountable teams, huh?
Oh, wow.
Oh, we have some rogues. We have some rogue employees.
Some trolls.
Wow. Imagine that. So the other one, to wrap this part up here, there was collusion with non-governmental agencies as well. So I understand the government agencies, they can intimidate in a certain way. But a non-government organization, Twitter was engaging with non-government organizations to monitor and flag problematic content. So whatever they thought was problematic content, they were participating, and Twitter was obedient in doing so. Now, this is just Twitter.
Wow.
But Twitter is one social media company that's an example of what was going on.
Yeah.
So then, is it safe to assume that the FBI, the CIA, the DHS, the CDC was also doing the same to Facebook?
Yeah.
Doing the same to Instagram? Doing the same to Snapchat? Doing the same to YouTube?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Man. So, before we get into wrapping this show up, I do want to do a quick little wrap up. We talked about just, why is the media being so distrusted? And then we talked about the corporate influence, the power players, the fact that Mockingbird, they talk about Mockingbird as something that used to be of the past. I don't think it's of the past. I think it's still around. The media, the journalists, academia, the saturation of information that's available. It seems like it's all been orchestrated. It seems like it's all been orchestrated, man. It's pretty interesting. Let's go. Let's move on to the next section of this. So this was actually going to be, like I mentioned earlier, that this is where Snowden. I remember I told you Snowden was creeping in here. And the reason why I say Snowden is because, we're talking technology. We're talking about social media where you need to be able to know programming and technology to some extent, where you're able to maybe know how to hack. You're able to know how to, well, let me just get into this really quick. So here's who Edward Snowden is. For those of you that don't know who Edward Snowden is, he's a former contractor for the National Security Agency, the NSA. Now, in 2013, he became one of the most significant whistleblowers in modern history because he disclosed classified information. He revealed and exposed the scale and scope of global surveillance programs that were operated by the NSA and its partners, which sparked a worldwide debate about privacy, government overreach, and accountability. Because basically, violating our privacy, if we thought we had privacy, we don't. In the government, supposed to be reeled back, they're overreaching. And then, of course, when it comes time for someone who's got to pay a price for this, there's no accountability. But here's a breakdown of some of the stuff, the major disclosures that are implicated with when he uncovered this. And you guys are if you guys don't know about this, you guys are gonna have your minds blown right now. So there was mass collection of American people's phone records. Maybe you heard about that. Mass collection. The NSA was collecting metadata from millions of Americans, their phone calls, under what we call the Section 215 under the USA Patriot Act. The metadata was phone numbers, call durations, call times. And they say they're not the content or the call themselves. But why do you all of a sudden pull back the reins when you already got the number, you already got the time, you already got but you're going to stop short of not getting the content?
Yeah.
There's this thing called PRISM program. It was a surveillance program that allowed the NSA to collect data directly from major tech companies, including Google, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft. This included emails, chats, videos, photos, file transfers.
Well, isn't that funny? If you don't mind me interjecting, because in the wireless community, we worked with a large corporation, Verizon Wireless. Right. Before Verizon Wireless, it was AirTouch. And transferring information from one to the other, we utilized a system called PRISM. And we basically, I wonder if they're even tied in. I don't know, but it was numbers, and you can it wasn't about the data, but it was about information. You can find phone numbers, addresses through PRISM, and you collect certain information.
Did we actually run to create their account? Was it through PRISM?
Through PRISM.
So there was the information, there was the number, there was the social security, there was the date of
All of
birth.
that.
There was all of it right there.
And you can generate up to 5-10 numbers for one person at that through Prism. You could.
Yeah. Actually, the number that I still have today was generated through Prism.
Mine as well.
Sheesh.
Yeah.
So that when you do that, you collect all their data, their address, their social security.
Mm-hmm. That was the way of running the information.
Yeah, well, actually, now if we want to deep dive into that right now, if you went to anywhere, actually, if you wanted to go buy something and you wanted to do it through credit, they're going to want you to leave your name, your address, maybe your social, the last four, maybe your phone number, right? But you're going to assume that they're going to be held responsible if they share that data or if that data is leaked. In other words, something has to be in place where that information is private to the company. And that company, if it exposes that information, they should be liable for lawsuit, right?
Yes.
So it was no different. I remember, you're exactly right, man. When we used to have to build accounts, we built them using the Prism system.
The Prism.
And the Prism system was an NSA program. It was an NSA program.
Oh, wow.
And if you think about how many millions of people, because at that time, everyone didn't have a cell phone, and through the AirTouch, the years of AirTouch, we were still, convincing people to get a phone, but we kept getting people free phones. Oh, free phone. Oh, free phone. You want a free phone? Free phone. You run your information through Prism.
Got to run your credit
got to run your credit.
Yeah, they run your credit. They know
information through Prism.
Yeah.
Here you go.
They know your credit
free
score.
Phone. Nokia 918. Here you go.
They know your address. They know your cousins.
Oh, man. So this gets actually a little bit spicier. So there was another program called X Keyscore. So that was a tool that was used by the NSA to search, analyze global internet data, including email, social media activity, and browsing history. So forget about the fact that they were doing this in the United States. They were doing it globally as well, using that Keyscore.
Yeah.
Vodafone.
Global Surveillance Alliance. So the NSA collaborated with foreign intelligence agencies. So they were actually in cahoots with US. So it was the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand all shared intelligence using this global surveillance. So they've been spying on the planet.
Yeah. Wow. They have all the data.
Planet. All right. Last one here about the NSA. It was surveillance of world leaders. The NSA spied on foreign leaders like the German chancellor, the Brazilian president, and embassies and diplomatic missions were also targeted. These guys, nothing was escaping them. And there is one more piece of information. When we thought, you heard about encryption, right? That encryption is the ultimate security. Oh, if it's encrypted, you're secure, The NSA sought to undermine encryption standards, making secure communication vulnerable to interception. Efforts included inserting backdoors into software and pressuring companies to weaken their encryption.
So like CDMA and TDMA technologies to have them weaken those technologies? Or they can be encrypted?
Or let's just say, let's use the example of WhatsApp. WhatsApp says that if you do any type of communication over their line, you can't get hacked.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Because it's encrypted.
Yeah.
But little did we know.
Or Telegram.
Or Telegram.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, here's the frustrating part of this. These companies are selling it. They're making money off the public, making the public believe that their stuff is secure because of encryption. And then we find out that the NSA was undermining encryption standards, making inserting backdoors into the software and pressuring companies to weaken it so that they can still have access to it.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. So Snowden's revelation. So this was now you guys understand why Snowden was a big deal. Do you know that he's not in the United States?
I didn't know he was in he was, or he would never was.
He fled.
Oh, he was in Hawaii for a while.
And then he went to Russia. I don't know where he's at. I don't know if he's still there now.
Oh, but he was in Russian.
Well, Russia said, you can come here for a safe haven
and you'll be good,
because he had to flee. If he didn't flee,
too much,
he was being looked at as a traitor, and he was going to probably get capital punishment.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've watched some of his videos. He seems like he's an ethical guy because he'd always say, "I want the public to judge for themselves if what we're doing is right or wrong.
Yes. So Snowden's revelations, they did lead to what they call the USA Freedom of Act in 2015. So 2 years later, it supposedly ended the bulk collection of Americans' phone data. It also requires greater oversight and transparency from these surveillance programs. Um, Snowden's actions also inspired discussions about ethical responsibility and these whistleblowers. Companies like Apple, WhatsApp, they strengthened their encryption in their products.
Mm.
But at this point,
What can you
why
trust?
trust it?
How can you trust that?
Yeah.
What do they mean strengthen?
Yeah.
Right.
Strengthen the ability to look into it more,
Yeah.
or strengthen the side for the public to strengthen our trust into them. I don't understand.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, what do you think was the consequence of this, especially when they found out that they were spying on foreign leaders? Well, the exposure of U.S. surveillance programs caused diplomatic rifts. It led countries to reconsider their data sharing agreements with the United States. So I don't know where it's at now because this is 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So 10 years later, where are we? Well, we're at the point right now where Twitter files might be the most current, exposure,
Yeah.
about corruption. But wow. But
Yes.
here, let's before we wrap this up, we're gonna play something fun here, like a little fun game here regarding how long do you think this takes before we get a balance? Because you would say that the landscape is unbalanced, right?
Yeah.
Swinging back to the 92% and the 90% of journalism and academia, and then the content saturation being 75 to 90%. With all that information, how in the hell do we balance that out?
Mm.
So I'm gonna throw 6 points that actually need to be considered, taken into account, and then I'm gonna throw the number out there and I'll see what you guys think. So there needs to be a growth spurt of independent platforms, these alternative news medias. There needs to just be a growth spurt of independent platforms. There needs to be an implementation of algorithmic transparency policies. So something that makes these private companies have to share what these algorithms were looking like. Institutional reforms in journalism and academia, like getting to the bottom of this hiring process. It just keeps only hiring at a 10 to 1, at a 20 to 1, at a 30 to 1 ratio.
Yeah.
And then widespread use of fair algorithm. So in other words, once this algorithm that's fair, make it widespread so that it's all in the technology. So people are able to then feel like, all right, I am getting a fair balance. I am getting both sides so that I can be the one that makes the decision, as an independent thinker. And then a cultural shift that encourages diverse viewpoints. That's huge, because if we don't have that cultural shift, if we don't have anybody calling out the young people that they're tilted in their views, we need a cultural shift.
Yeah.
And a critical evaluation of media by audience. So if all these 6 things happened, how long do you think it would be before we can find this balance? Because I have the number. The research showed the number.
You have a number? I would say, in my mind, just because of the way technology is moving so fast and how slow humans are thinking in comparison to the technology that's here, in order for that shift, I would say a good 60, 70 years.
Sheesh.
Yeah.
I'd say
I like that number.
I'd say about 30, 40 years.
I like that number too. An entire generation. Seeing a balance, seeing all this mess that we talked about, and then there finally being a result, some kind of a balance, 20 to 30 years, a full generation.
Sheesh.
So it wouldn't even happen in our time, because we're unless we live to be 90 or 100, but by that time, what do we care?
Yeah.
But to think about us that have kids, we know that if this doesn't happen, what's in store for them?
We're doomed, huh?
So we need to be more responsive and start to teach our youth to not depend on certain media outlets. Obviously, we don't want to get these kids hooked on the wrong media outlets and show them that they could be more independently thinking about, being successful in their own way versus leaning upon, media. The media is horrible, man.
Yeah. And that leads us to our conclusion here, which is we titled it "The Road Ahead." Well, this road ahead doesn't seem like it's. I'm not inspired. I'll say that. Because it's not going to happen in the next 5 years. It's not going to happen in the next 10 years. It's not even going to happen in the next 20 years. Just simply because of so many components. That have to fall into place.
Yeah.
So the decline of trust in the MSM. We need transparency.
Yeah.
And the editorial process.
Yeah.
We need diversity in perspectives, which is huge changes in the selection of journalism.
Yes.
And journalists and academia, the hiring of another side.
Yeah.
And the accountability of both media and government agencies. Like the fact that the FBI thought the DHS, the CD, the fact that these entities thought that they can just go and say, hey, we're going to collude with these social media companies. Because why? They've been colluding with the television news corporations.
They've helped direct so many movies. The CIA and FBI, they have an entertainment budget. So 24, there's a lot of movies that we watch that they wrote the scripts for.
Wow.
So you don't know if this is
more tilted stuff.
Yeah, you don't know if this is actual based on a true story or if it's just something.
What they want us to.
Yeah.
So you mean to tell me? So you mean to
what I
tell
need
me
you to know.
The man on the moon may not be the man on the moon?
The man on the moon.
I don't
may
know.
not be
That's
the
a
man on the
coin toss.
That's a
I mean,
coin toss.
Can anybody verify or fact check that and say, oh yeah, in fact, there was someone walking on the moon that put an American flag on there, and there was wind on the moon. I mean, I don't know.
Something made that flag move, right?
Why was there a shadow right there? But yeah.
So, call to action for the audience. So, this is some suggestions for people like ourselves, right? We're not on the other side reporting.
We got to do our
this
homework.
side.
Yeah.
So, diversify the media consumption. This was into what you said, about what do we tell our kids? We diversify the media consumption. If you're just getting it from one source, man, that's a no-no.
Yeah.
You better go and get it from multiple sources. Probably at this point, at least a dozen.
At least
a dozen.
Yeah.
Demand the algorithmic fairness. So, when there's an opportunity to talk to some of these executives from these social media companies, man, start demanding it. Hey, man, your algorithms, policies, man, we need to be able to see those.
Yeah.
We need to be able to make those public, man. We need to be able to trust you. Because if not, if you're still behind closed doors, why should we trust you?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then a critical evaluation or critically evaluate the narratives from all the sources. So then all of a sudden now it's like, why are we pushing? In other words, you made a great point. You said, if you have a person, middle of America, and he's watching channel 3 news, and he's getting what he's getting, he's believing it, and that's what it is. Would he still think that if you were to able to show a screen with 100 other news networks and then time it perfectly so they're all saying the same damn thing? When they're saying the same damn thing,
crazy.
You start to evaluate that narrative. Whoa. Why are you all saying this?
Same thing.
So as an audience, diversify our media consumption, demand the algorithmic fairness, and then critically evaluate narratives from all these sources.
Yeah, we want the objective news, not the narrative news.
And so, what we end this episode with this last line here: independent media, citizen journalism, alternative media platforms. It's just not alternative. It's actually a vital force in restoring public trust and balance in journalism, but at a price that might be a generation away.
That's deep.
Yes.
And if you got any closing statements,
that's Ruben Santiago.
That's Todd Wright.
Paul Marshall. Do your due diligence. Just don't believe anything.
And we thank you for your time today.
And thank you for those ears. We know you were eavesdropping.